Greetings everyone, and welcome to Back to Ashes. I would like to thank the reform members of the channel, Interscare Wifey, Denise, Through Scrutiny, Samantha Play, Stephanie McLaren, Corpse Lover, Norman D.W., Christy Elias, Cindy Cleveland, and Patty's niece. If you would like to learn how to become a member of the channel or buy me a coffee as a special thank you, that can be found in the description below. Also, if you are new here or haven't done so already, please don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment. Not only does it help the channel, but it also reminds you of every time I upload a video. With all of that being said, it is time to go back to ashes, for once we arise from the ashes, we are a bigger, brighter, stronger, and happier in the morning. Sit back, relax, kick back, grab a snack, or tuck in to get warm, and prepare for this dose of vocal melatonin entitled True Unsolved Mysteries Volume 15. Right after this intro and ad will play, I'll read the first case and ad will play, and after that there will be no more ads within this video. Annie Paul and John Mashad, murders of a married couple whose bodies were found inside their home, remains unsolved. Annie Paul and John Mashad were murdered inside their home in Orlando, Florida, more than 2 decades ago, and the person responsible for their death has yet to be brought to justice. Paul and Mashad were a married couple living in a house in the 2500 block of Bluegill Street. Although they didn't have any children together, Paul had 7 children from previous relationships. On the night of May 19, 1994, 2 men went to their home, and it was then that they sent the children, who were between the ages of 1 and 15, outside, according to the Orlando Centennial. After a brief conversation, one of the men, or both, shot and killed Paul, 35, and her 38-year-old husband. It was reported that after their deaths, their children were sent to live with 2 different fathers and an aunt. The following month, the Orange County Sheriff's Office released a composite sketch of the 2 suspects. They are believed to have been black men in their early 30s at the time of the shooting. One of the suspects had a dark complexion with a low haircut, and he was balding. He was between 6'1" and 6'2", weighing approximately 180 pounds. The other suspect had a light complexion and a heavy build. He also had a low haircut and was bald on top of his head. Officials stated that he was around 5'10". Anyone with information regarding the unsolved murders of Annie Paul and John Mashad is encouraged to contact the Orange County Sheriff's Office at 407-836-4357. Kathy Lynn Glotty, murder of a 13-year-old girl whose body was found in a wooded area, remains unsolved. Kathy Lynn Glotty was a 13-year-old girl when she was murdered. Her body was found in a wooded area near downtown Franklin, New Hampshire, more than 45 years ago, and the person responsible for her death has yet to be brought to justice. On the evening of November 21, 1971, Kathy and her dog, Tasha, left home and went to a local grocery store to purchase ice cream. When the German Shepherd returned hours later without the teen, relatives became concerned. They began calling friends and neighbors, presumably asking about her whereabouts, ABC News reported. When relatives contacted the police to report Kathy missing, they were told that they would have to wait 24 hours. That's when they began searching for her on their own throughout the night. At around 1 p.m. the following day, on November 22, 1971, Kathy Lynn Glotty was found dead in a wooded area off Chance Pond Road, about a mile and a half away from her home. A hunter trudging through a wooded area had spotted an object he believed to be a deer carcass. Upon further investigation, he realized that it was the body of a female who was only wearing a pair of knee-high socks. According to the Laconia Daily Sun, Kathy had been sexually assaulted and strangled before she suffered severe injuries to her head, neck, and abdominal area. Kathy was also run over by a vehicle 4 times. "To think that she left there, you know," said the victim's sister. in the cold of a dark winter's night with no clothes on. And what happened to her just came crashing down. It was really hard. My mom was sobbing. My dad was crying. I just stood in the doorway and I said, "What's wrong?" And they just blurted out, "They found Kathy and she's dead. She's been murdered." That's not what you expect in a little town. In March 2016, a man spoke with an officer at the Dixie County Police Department in Florida and said, "I think I need to be arrested because I killed somebody." He then went on to provide details of Kathy's murder, but officials stated that his jumble of recollections did not quite match the facts. Will Delker, New Hampshire Senior Assistant Attorney General, said that when New Hampshire detectives went to Florida to question him, he then backtracked on some of the statements he made by claiming that the admissions to being involved in this murder were a result of medication. This case would have been solved if that crime happened today, given modern forensic techniques, Delker added. DNA samples would have been obtained and it would have been very quick to determine who the actual perpetrator was. Unfortunately, this was no one's fault. It's just the reality of technologies that existed almost 40 years ago. Kathy's mother, father, and one of her siblings have since passed away, but her remaining relatives are still seeking justice. Anyone with information regarding the unsolved murder of Kathy Langlotty is encouraged to submit a tip online to the New Hampshire Department of Justice. Theresa Marow and Mark Harish, murders of a young couple whose bodies were found at a rest stop, remains unsolved. Theresa Marow and Mark Harish were murdered more than 40 years ago at a rest stop in West Springfield, Massachusetts, and the person responsible for their death has yet to be brought to justice. At around 9:30 a.m. on November 19, 1978, an officer was patrolling a rest area on Route 5 along the Connecticut River when he discovered the bullet-riddled bodies of Marow, 18, and Harish, 20. They were located behind a 15-foot concrete retaining wall, according to the North Adams transcript. Harish's vehicle, which was a dilapidated pickup truck, was found nearby with the driver's side window blown out by a shotgun. An autopsy revealed that Marow and Harish, a couple from East Long Meadow, had died from multiple gunshot wounds. The Hampden County Medical Examiner determined that the shooting occurred between 1 a.m. and 9 a.m. that morning. They were believed to have been shot with a large caliber handgun. Marow and Harish were fully clothed when they were found, and there was no sign of sexual assault. It was reported that Marow and Harish were high school dropouts and living out of their truck at the time of the murders, but they both had jobs. Harish worked as a mechanic while Marow was employed at a hardware store. Following a police investigation, it was revealed that as the couple was sleeping, multiple shots were fired through the driver's side window. At the time of the shooting, Harish was sitting in the driver's seat and Marow was presumably in the passenger seat. Marow and Harish were then dragged out of the truck and their bodies were discarded behind a retaining wall, according to the Berkshire Eagle. Investigators are unclear about the motive for the slayings, but it has been reported that it was unlikely to be a robbery. Anyone with information regarding the unsolved murders of Theresa Marow and Mark Harish is encouraged to contact the State Police Detective Unit at 413-505-5941 or the State Police Unsolved Cases Unit at 1-855-627-6583 or send a text with the word SOLVE to 274637. Angeli, murder of a 41-year-old woman whose body was found on the side of a highway, remains unsolved. Michelle Angeli was 41 years old when she was murdered. Her body was found on the side of a highway in Brighton, Wisconsin, more than 15 years ago, and the person responsible for her murder has yet to be brought to justice. After graduating from Mary D. Bradford High School in 1980, Angeli attended the Milwaukee School of Cosmetology. She subsequently began working as a model for Merrill Norman Cosmetics Company, as well as a waitress for several years at various restaurants in Kenosha County, according to the Kenosha News. Angeli then became involved with drugs. It is believed that someone, after being diagnosed with bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, she moved into an upper unit at the Transitional Living Center, an assisted living apartment building located at the 5500 block of 19th Avenue. Staff members stated that she would often check in with the community support program, but after August 22, 2003, those check-ins stopped. On August 27, 2003, the staff contacted the Kenosha County Sheriff's Department and reported Michelle Angeli missing. Investigators stated that Angeli was last seen on August 25, 2003, leaving a local tavern, Johnny Midnight, with a Hispanic male. Witnesses told investigators that the male appeared to be in his 40s, and he was described as clean-cut with a medium build, and he was wearing a large gold ring. Sheriff's Captain Gary D. Preston stated that a partygoer saw him with her, so naturally, we're curious as to who he is and what he might know. Investigators said he was not a suspect in the case. On the morning of September 8, 2003, Michelle Angeli was found dead in the grass along Highway 75. A county worker was mowing an embankment when he spotted the nude body, which was partially decomposed, of a female about 20 feet from the roadway, the Journal-Times reported. The body was identified through fingerprints as Angeli's. Her cause of death has not been revealed, but police officials are investigating her case as a homicide. Anyone with information regarding the unsolved murder of Michelle Angeli is encouraged to contact Kenosha County Sheriff's Department Detective Bureau at 262-605-5102 or call Crime Stoppers at 262-656-7333. Eugene Bell, murder of a 41-year-old man whose body was found on the side of the roadway, remains unsolved. Eugene Bell, who went by the name Yellow, was 41 years old when he was murdered. His body was found on the side of the roadway in West Dade Horse Country, Florida, more than 30 years ago, and the person responsible for his death has yet to be brought to justice. At approximately 4:30 p.m. on April 24, 1988, a Sanyo speaker box was discovered along a road at Southwest 51st Street and 122nd Avenue with Bell's body inside. Just before his body was found, the Miami-Dade Police Department reported that a witness saw a Latin male between the ages of 30 and 40 years old driving a black pickup truck, possibly a Chevrolet 1987 with dual wheels, an open bed, and a king cab near the area. An autopsy revealed that Bell had been murdered, as his cause of death was listed as strangulation, but he was not strangled with his killer's hands. "We don't know what was used," said Metro Homicide Detective Kevin Conley. He also stated that Bell had bruises on his neck. According to a 1988 report from the Miami Herald, Bell of Crete, Illinois, was a used car salesman, and he owned Kansas Auto Sales in Calumet City near Chicago. Up until the time of his death, Bell was apparently being investigated for narcotics trafficking. Detectives spoke with his wife, which was through her attorney. She stated that Bell was supposed to be in Fort Lauderdale at the time his body was found. It was reported that investigators had no idea what Bell was doing in Miami. Anyone with information regarding the unsolved murder of Eugene Bell is encouraged to contact Crime Stoppers at 305-471-8477 or send an email to the Homicide Bureau at homeinfo@mdpd.com. Mindy West, murder of a 31-year-old woman whose body was found tied to a tree, remains unsolved. Mindy West was 31 years old when she was murdered. Her body was found tied to a tree in a wooded area in Manchester, New Hampshire. More than 20 years have passed, and the person responsible for her death has yet to be brought to justice. After graduating from Londonderry High School with exceptional grade, West of Londonderry matriculated at the University of New Hampshire. She dropped out of college during her freshman year when she became heavily involved with drugs, WMUR reported. For well over 10 years, West struggled with her addiction, but in 1996, it took a turn for the worse when her mother died of cancer. She was unable to hold a steady job, and she had 2 prostitution convictions, court records showed. She tried to get sober to get custody of her 2-year-old then daughter, but her father said the state pushed over the edge when it took her to court, and they wanted her to pay child support, according to the Boston Globe. West told her father that it was overwhelming. It's too much, everything they expect of me. In spite of what she was going through, it was reported that West would contact her father every week. When those calls stopped, the family had an inkling that something was wrong. On July 30th, 1998, West was reported missing. She was supposedly last seen in the area of Concord Street with her boyfriend, but police officials stated that the witnesses who provided that information were involved in drugs, and they therefore weren't credible. Nearly 3 months later, on October 4th, 1998, Mindy West was found dead in a wooded area near a residential neighborhood, just off Hughes Road. She had been tied to a tree with a rope around her neck, police stated. An autopsy indicated that West's cause of death was strangulation. In 2005, Manchester Police Detective John Patty told WMUR that the key to this whole case is that location where she was discovered. It doesn't make any sense for her to be there. Investigators have received thousands of tips and have interviewed hundreds of people throughout the years, but they have yet to get a break in the case. Anyone with information regarding the unsolved murder of Mindy West is encouraged to submit a tip online to the New Hampshire Department of Justice. Myrtle Jackson, murder of a 27-year-old woman who was found inside her vehicle, remains unsolved. Myrtle Jackson, who also went by the names Myrtle Grant and Mrs. Kenneth Grant, was 27 years old when she was murdered. Her body was found inside her vehicle more than 40 years ago, and the person responsible for her death has yet to be brought to justice. On the morning of July 16, 1977, Jackson left her home, located on the 100 block of Overbrook Road, in her Volkswagen. As she was driving on Spruce Street, an unknown person shot her in the head, according to the Greenville News. Jackson was found that same morning near 15 Spruce Street, slumped over in the driver's seat of her vehicle with the engine still running. Emergency first responders presumably arrived on the scene and subsequently transported her to Greenville General Hospital, where she was listed in critical condition. Jackson was pronounced dead sometime after her arrival. A police report indicated that Jackson believed she was being followed before she was shot and killed. Police officials stated that a witness saw a vehicle speeding from the crime scene, but no other information was provided. Anyone with information regarding the unsolved murder of Myrtle Jackson is encouraged to contact the Greenville Police Department at 864-271-5333. Ricky Lane Allen, murder of a 36-year-old man whose body was found inside his home, remains unsolved. Ricky Lane Allen was 36 years old when he was murdered. His body was found inside his home in El Paso County, Colorado, more than 25 years ago, and the person responsible for his death has yet to be brought to justice. At around 11:15 p.m. on March 18, 1991, one of Allen's friends went to his home in Colorado Springs and found him unresponsive on the floor with a gunshot wound to the head. The gun was also found in his hand. When emergency first responders arrived on the scene, they pronounced Allen dead, the Daily Centennial reported. Crime scene analysts and detectives determined that the killer staged the crime scene and made it look like Allen committed suicide when, in fact, he was murdered. The motive for the killing is unknown. According to the Colorado Springs Police Department, after investigators analyzed evidence collected from Allen's residence and interviewed his family and friends, they stated that they believe he was heavily involved in drugs. An investigation into Allen's death is ongoing. Anyone with information regarding the unsolved murder of Ricky Lane Allen is encouraged to contact the Colorado Springs Police Department at 719-444-7000. Janice Beetman, murder of a woman and her 18-month-old son Brandon, whose bodies were found in a creek, remained unsolved. Janice Beetman and her 18-month-old son Brandon were murdered more than 35 years ago. Their bodies were found in a creek in Franklin County, Ohio, and the person or persons responsible for their deaths have yet to be brought to justice. On September 13, 1981, Janice was at a relative's house near Myrtle Avenue and Marissa Drive, where she called her husband and told him that she was going to stop by a grocery store before heading home. She then loaded her son into her vehicle, a 1974 Chevrolet Vega, and drove off. That was the last time anyone saw them alive. At around 1:20 p.m. the following day, on September 14, 1981, Janice and Brandon Beetman were found dead in Loon Creek. The News Messenger reported that a resident alerted police after finding Janice lying on her back in about 1 foot of water. Brandon was found floating about 50 yards away beneath the Agler Road Bridge west of Sunbury Road. Columbus Police Department Detective Dana Farbacher said, "Her car was beneath the bridge. There's a service road that leads to the creek, and the suspect found that and drove down." An autopsy revealed that Janice had been severely beaten with an unknown object before she was strangled to death, and her son was suffocated with a pillow. Before their bodies were discarded in Loon Creek, police officials stated that the killer initially assaulted Janice on Putter Avenue, as they uncovered some of her belongings in that area, including her jewelry, according to 10 TV. Nearby residents told police that around the time Janice was attacked, they heard a woman screaming. One resident said, "All she said was, redacted. Such a wicked scream, like she was really being hurt. Real wicked. There was a little kid involved, and that was the main thing that concerned me because the little kid didn't have a chance at life. That really takes a different, very cruel type of person to do something like that," Farbacher said. It was reported in 2009 that detectives were in the process of re-interviewing witnesses and relatives, and they had also resubmitted Evidence. Anyone with the information regarding the unsolved murder of Janice and Brandon Beetman is encouraged to contact Central Ohio Crime Stoppers at 614-461-TIPS or submit a tip online. Crime Stoppers is offering a $5,000 reward for more information on the case. Rosanne Spina, murder of a 17-year-old girl whose body was found near a parking lot, remains unsolved. Rosanne Spina, often spelled Rose Ann Spina, was 17 years old when she was murdered. Her body was found near a parking lot in Syracuse, New York, more than 50 years ago, and the person responsible for her death has yet to be brought to justice. On the night of September 22, 1967, Rosanne, a senior at Corcoran High School, told her mother that she was going to hang out with her friend who was also 17. Her mother thought she was going to her friend's house, but Rosanne and her friend were actually going bar hopping in the area. They were kicked out of one of the bars when employees found out that they were underage, but that didn't stop them from going to another bar. At around 3 a.m. on September 23, 1967, Rosanne, who was described as very bright by the people who knew her, left Rinaldi's bar in the 300 block of Burnett Avenue and was never seen alive again. When her mother awoke at around 5 a.m. and realized that Rosanne Spina hadn't returned home, she contacted the Syracuse Police Department and reported her missing. Her mother told a reporter that after contacting the police department, she was told that it was the weekend and they were short-handed, according to the Daily News. On September 25, 1967, Rosanne was found dead. A passerby discovered her partially nude body in tall weeds near a parking lot in the 700 block of Canal Street, which was located near an abandoned railroad gravel bed. Officials said her slip had been twisted around her neck, and an autopsy revealed that Rosanne had been brutally beaten and strangled to death. According to the Onondaga County Medical Examiner's Office, Rosanne had been dead for 24 hours before her body was found. When the police questioned Rosanne's friend, she told them that she left the bar at around 3 a.m. when she found a ride home. She last saw Rosanne standing on a street corner, confabulating with 4 boys, whom witnesses said may have been college students. Investigators wanted to question more teens who may have been in contact with Rosanne on the day she went missing, but they were unsuccessful in doing so, according to the Evening Times. Anyone with information regarding the unsolved murder of Rosanne Spina is encouraged to contact the Syracuse Police Department's Cold Case Homicide Squad at 315-442-5234 or by email at coldcasesquad@syracusepolice.org. Tipsters can remain anonymous. Anita Liaz, murder of a 16-year-old girl whose body was found in an alley, remains unsolved. Anita Liaz was 16 years old when she was murdered. Her body was found in an alley in Franklin County, Ohio, more than 45 years ago, and the person responsible for her death has yet to be brought to justice. On August 30th, 1975, Anita left her home in Columbus to start her job as a babysitter. When she failed to return home that day, her father contacted the Columbus Police Department the following morning and reported her missing, according to the Telegraph Forum. 2 days later, on September 1st, 1975, Anita was found dead in an alley near her home. Her fully clothed body was discovered in front of a garage at 862 South Champion with her hands tied behind her back. An autopsy showed that Anita had been strangled. She was also stabbed, presumably in the chest and upper torso areas. Police officials stated that there was no indication that she had been sexually assaulted. There are few details available in Anita's case. Anyone with information regarding the unsolved murder of Anita Liaz is encouraged to contact the Columbus Police Department's Homicide Cold Case Unit at 614-645-4036. Patricia Jones' murder of a 32-year-old woman whose body was found in an alleyway remains unsolved. Patricia Jones was 32 years old when she was murdered. Her body was found in an alleyway in Monterey, California, more than 4 decades ago, and the person responsible for the murder has yet to be brought to justice. On January 11, 1974, Jones left her home in San Mateo and got on a city bus heading to Monterey. When she arrived, she attempted to rent a vehicle at the airport at around 9:50 a.m., but she was unsuccessful. Her whereabouts after leaving the airport are unknown, according to the Monterey Police Department. The following morning, at around 6:30 a.m. on January 12, 1974, Jones was found dead. 3 boys delivering newspapers discovered her fully clothed body in the alleyway of Bruce Lane, near an establishment called Kirby Appliance Store, which is no longer in business. The Times reported that Jones died after being shot 5 times in the back. The information investigators have gathered from the case may have led them to the conjecture that Jones was killed sometime between 9:50 p.m. on January 11, 1974, and 2:12 a.m. on January 12, 1974. Detectives could not determine if she was shot to death in the alley or if she was killed elsewhere, and afterward, the killer dumped her body in the alleyway. They are also unsure of why she opted to travel to Monterey. Police officials disclosed that, at the time of her death, Jones occasionally worked as an escort. In 1974, a news article asserted that Jones worked as a secretary at Stanford University School of Education in Stanford, California. A police spokesperson said they do not have a person of interest in the case, as there were presumably no witnesses and the information surrounding Jones's death is scant. Anyone with information regarding the unsolved murder of Patricia Jones is encouraged to contact the Monterey Police Department at 831-646-3914. Rachel Hurley, murder of a 14-year-old girl whose body was found in a wooded area, remains unsolved. Rachel Hurley was 14 years old when she was murdered. Her body was found in a wooded area at Carlin Park near the beach in Jupiter, Florida, more than 30 years ago, and the person responsible for her death has yet to be brought to justice. It was a windy St. Patrick's Day, March 17, 1990, when Rachel, an 8th grade student at Jupiter Middle School, went to lunch with a group of her friends. They then went boating near the Jupiter Inlet, according to the Sun Centennial. During the boat ride, Rachel asked one of her friends for the time. When she learned that it was 2:45 p.m., she began to worry, as she knew her mother, Andrea Hurley, was going to pick her up at Carlin Park at 3 p.m., and she didn't want to be late. Rachel got off the boat at a dock in Dubious Park at Jupiter Inlet. 2 of her friends, Maddie and Aaron, got off the boat as well. Just as Rachel was about to take off, they asked her to wait while they went to the restroom. Rachel was in such a hurry that she flipped her hair and began running in the direction of Carlin Park, which was about a mile away. That was the last time the aspiring fighter pilot was seen alive. When her mother arrived at Carlin Park to pick her up, Rachel wasn't there. Andrea initially thought that they might have agreed to meet at the Jupiter Inlet instead. Quote, "I thought I'm going to go down to the Inlet Park and she's going to be standing there and say, "Well, I told you the Inlet Park," Andrea said in 1991. She went to Jupiter Inlet, but Rachel wasn't there either. Andrea then drove to her home to see if she was there, but she wasn't. That's when she knew something was wrong. Andrea returned to the park with her neighbors and friends, and together they commenced searching for Rachel. When they couldn't find her, Andrea contacted the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office and reported Rachel missing. NBC News reported that more than 100 deputies, 2 boats, 1 helicopter, 8 mounted deputies, and 3 canine units helped search for the missing teen. At approximately 8:15 p.m. on March 17, 1999, Rachel was found dead. Her partially clothed body was found face up under brush near a path in a wooded area at Carlin Park, about a mile from where she was last seen. Some of her clothing was found scattered nearby. An autopsy revealed that Rachel died of asphyxiation. It was also uncovered that she had been sexually assaulted and had defensive wounds on her body. Authorities surmised that when Rachel got off the boat, she walked along the beach and eventually took a shortcut through a wooded area where she was attacked, sexually assaulted, and smothered to death. A homeless man is believed to be Rachel's killer, as the area where her body was found was home to several vagrants. Around the time she would have been killed, a high school student told investigators that a tall, disheveled man was seen leaving the wooded area, and he appeared nervous. More than 125 men, including the homeless, were tested, and none of their DNA matched the DNA found on Rachel's body. In 1994, police officials released a composite sketch of a man who a witness said was sitting on the bench just north of the Civic Center after they heard someone scream in the woods. Before they could come into contact with the man, he left, the Palm Beach Post reported. To honor Rachel's memory, the Palm Beach County Board of Commissioners renamed a softball field after her in 1991. Her mother stated that she enjoyed playing softball at Jupiter Park and considered it the best place to be. In a video, PBSO Detective William Springer said, quote, "How would you feel if your daughter didn't come home and then she was found viciously murdered, and you knew something about it, or you knew somebody knew something about it, and that person didn't have the fortitude to man up, come out and help you?" Springer also added, I can't picture going to bed at night knowing that my daughter or son was murdered and nobody wants to help. That's a terrible loss. I know that somebody out there has firsthand knowledge that could put us on the right track to put this person in jail, and they need to step up and do the right thing. In 2019, Rachel's father, Daniel Hurley, passed away unexpectedly, not knowing who murdered his daughter. A detective stated that he was, quote, "sorry that I couldn't solve his daughter's murder before he died." Anyone with information regarding the unsolved murder of Rachel Hurley is encouraged to contact Crime Stoppers of Palm Beach County at 1-800-458-TIPS. A $15,000 reward is being offered for information leading to an arrest. Ephran Okomo, murder of a 7-month-old baby boy who was left in the care of his babysitter, remains unsolved. Ephran Okomo was a 7-month-old baby boy who was murdered in Salt Lake City, Utah, more than 30 years ago, and the person responsible for his death has yet to be brought to justice. On November 28, 1988, Ephran and Norma Okomo left their baby in the care of a babysitter at a home at 848 West 200 South. Sometime after their departure, the babysitter took Ephran to a clinic at 1525 West 21st South and said he was stiff and having difficulty breathing when he woke up from a nap, according to the Desert News. Ephran, who was born on April 2, 1988, was conveyed to Primary Children's Medical Center, where he died 2 days later on November 30, 1988. The medical examiner has never given a cause of death for the infant, homicide detective Jerry Mendez said in 1989. The injuries sustained by the infant were not as obvious as most child abuse cases where the child dies. They did, however, state that his death is being investigated as a homicide. According to a 1988 report, Ephran may have died after being violently shaken, as he sustained, quote, extensive brain damage and retinal hemorrhaging. Ephran was interned several days after his death, presumably at the Larkin Sunset Lawn Mortuary in Salt Lake City, Utah. His obituary stated that, quote, he is loved and will be missed by many who survived. His parents, godmother and godfather, and his grandfather. There are little known facts about the case, but an investigation into Ephran's death continues. Anyone with information regarding the unsolved murder of Ephran Okomo is encouraged to contact the Salt Lake City Police at 801-799-3000. Ricardo Villa, drive-by shooting that killed a 15-year-old boy remains unsolved. Ricardo Villa was 15 years old when he was murdered in Tucson, Arizona, more than 10 years ago, and the person responsible for his death has yet to be brought to justice. On February 3, 2008, Ricardo, who at the time was a freshman at Canyon Rose Academy, was spending the weekend at his grandmother's house in the 800 block of Calle Matus near West Grand Road and North 15th Avenue, according to the Arizona Daily Star. While there, it was reported that when he stepped outside to play cards with his relatives, an occupant in a white Cadillac Escalade opened fire as it drove by, striking Ricardo in the head, just above his eye. Ricardo was rushed to the University Medical Center, where he succumbed to his injuries at around 3 p.m. the following day, February 4, 2008. No one else was injured during the shooting, which relatives believe was connected to a party that was taking place nearby, and partygoers may have gotten out of hand, the Tucson Weekly reported. In a statement, the victim's family stated that he was a great kid with a great big heart. He was a good person who did not deserve this. Investigators have worked diligently to find the person who killed Ricardo, but ultimately, his case has turned cold. Anyone with information regarding the unsolved murder of Ricardo Villa is encouraged to call 88-CRIME at 520-882-7463 or submit a tip online at 88-CRIME. William Agee, murder of a 36-year-old man whose body was found buried in a shallow grave, remains unsolved. William Agee was just 36 years old when he was murdered. His body was found buried in a shallow grave in Brevard County, Florida, more than 45 years ago, and the person responsible for his death has yet to be brought to justice. In 1972, Agee, a Tennessee native who was married but had been separated from his wife for 5 years, left his job of 6 years as a steward aboard the SS Huntsville dock in Port Canaveral and moved to Melbourne, where he began working in the sanitation department, Florida Today reported. After 7 months of employment, he was fired for missing too many days of work. A little over 2 months later, on December 23, 1972, Agee was reported missing from his home in the 2000 block of South Main Street. 2 days later, on December 25, 1972, his vehicle, a white 1961 convertible, was found abandoned near Dublin, Georgia. Harold Mormon, a Georgia Bureau of Investigation agent, said, quote, "There was a tremendous amount of blood in the car. We found a hunk of blonde hair that appeared to be a woman." It was reported that the vehicle, which was locked when it was discovered, was littered with empty whiskey bottles, cigarette butts, and beer cans. A woman's near-empty purse containing a snapshot of a woman and a man was found in the car, along with an old suitcase, Mormon said. On the afternoon of January 2, 1973, William Agee was found dead. The crane operator, working in an area about 100 feet from a deserted roadway near the SR 46 and I-95 intersection just west of Mims, encountered the nude body of a male. The body was later identified through fingerprints as that of Agee, and it was buried in 6 to 12 inches of soil, according to the Orlando Centennial. A pair of socks and shorts were also found within the vicinity of his body, police said. An autopsy revealed that Agee died from 2 gunshot wounds to the head. Evidence at the scene suggested that Agee was killed on New Year's weekend, or 4 to 8 days before his body was found, according to the Miami Herald. Investigators worked diligently to find Agee's killer, but ultimately, his case turned cold. Anyone with information regarding the unsolved murder of William Agee is encouraged to contact the Brevard County Sheriff's Office at 321-633-8413 or contact Crime Line at 1-800-423-TIPS. Tipsters may receive a reward of up to $5,000. Elizabeth Barclay, murder of a 7-year-old girl whose body was found on the side of the road, remains unsolved. Elizabeth Barclay was just 7 years old when she was murdered. Her body was found on the side of the road in Van Zant County, Texas, more than 40 years ago, and the person responsible for her death has yet to be brought to justice. On the evening of October 23, 1979, Elizabeth, who was wearing white shorts and a red, white, and blue halter top, went to a neighborhood store with her 3-year-old brother and a male friend, 5, to buy ice cream. As they were walking down a street near the area of 2900 West Northwest Highway, KHOU 11 reported that a dark-colored vehicle with a trunk lid that wouldn't close all the way stopped beside them. A husky African-American male believed to be between the ages of 30 and 35 at the time exited the vehicle and purportedly exposed himself to the children before he grabbed Elizabeth. He struck her several times and threatened to throw her in the water as he carried her back to his vehicle. The man drove off, leaving the boys unscathed. When the children reported the abduction to the adults, the police were notified and a search for the first grader commenced. At the time Elizabeth was kidnapped, she lived in an apartment in northeast Dallas with her mother, who was questioned by police. Police Sergeant D.N. James stated that they have, quote, questioned her thoroughly and were satisfied the abduction has nothing whatsoever to do with any relationship she has with people. Elizabeth's family offered a $5,000 reward for her safe return and also helped the police search surrounding areas, including lakes, creeks, alleyways, and gravel pits, but their efforts were unsuccessful. 4 days after Elizabeth was kidnapped, a man fitting the description of the suspect was arrested on an outstanding traffic ticket. Police held him at the county jail for questioning, but according to the Kilgore News-Herald, Sergeant John Adamkick stated that the chances are very slim that he will be the suspect. He's just another one of many people that fit the general description of the kidnapper and drive an automobile that may generally fit the description. Another man was arrested at a phone booth for calling the police and asking for $10,000 in exchange for Elizabeth's safe return, but apparently he too had nothing to do with her abduction. Nearly 2 months later, on December 20th, 1979, Elizabeth was found dead on her birthday. She would have been 8 years old. The Fort Worth Star-Telegram reported that farm workers were hauling hay in the Willis Point Road area when they discovered her decomposed body in a ditch, just 45 miles east of Dallas. Also found at the scene were 2 .45 caliber cartridges, which were in close proximity to the body, police said. Some of her bones were found scattered across the roadway. One of the farmers believed that animals may have been clawing at it sometime that day, as it wasn't there the day before. Homicide Lieutenant B.G. Maroney stated that before the remains were identified through dental records as those of Elizabeth, they had already suspected that it was her. Maroney said clothing at the scene was worn by Elizabeth when she was abducted. Following an autopsy, medical examiners ruled Elizabeth's death as a homicide. However, they have yet to divulge the exact cause of the death. According to a report from the Austin American-Statesman in 1979, the descendant's father said, quote, "This is just not fair. Why such a beautiful, loving girl should have to end her life this way, scared and away from the family that loves her. It's also not fair since the man who did this is still out there. We have tried all the time not to think bad of him, but now I have nothing but hate for him." Throughout the years, investigators have worked diligently to find the person who killed Elizabeth. They rummaged through the files of known sex offenders, but they were unable to connect anyone to the crime, and ultimately, her case turned cold. Anyone with information regarding the unsolved murder of Elizabeth Barclay is encouraged to contact the Texas Crime Stoppers hotline at 1-800-252-TIPS. The Texas Department of Public Safety, or DPS, is offering a reward of up to $6,000 for information leading to an arrest. Michael Ryan Snapp, murder of a 19-year-old college student whose body was found at his off-campus apartment, remains unsolved. Michael Ryan Snapp was 19 years old when he was murdered. His body was found at his off-campus apartment in Virginia Beach, Virginia, more than 15 years ago, and the person responsible for his murder has yet to be brought to justice. On the night of September 24th, 2003, Snapp, a student and baseball player at Virginia Wesleyan College, and 2 of his teammates were hanging out at a neighborhood bar called Hoopla's. At 1:30 a.m., the sophomore purportedly left the bar alone and walked back to his residence, located at the North Beach apartment complex in the 4600 block of Down East Court, as stated by the Daily Press. His mother stated that, quote, "He never talked about crime in the complex. I felt uncomfortable about his safety too because Michael has aunts, uncles, grandparents, and cousins who live within a half-mile radius of his apartment." At around 2:30 a.m. the following morning, on September 25th, emergency responders found Snapp dead in the doorway of his home. His body was transported to the state medical examiner's office, where it was confirmed that Snap, who was originally from Newport News, died from a gunshot wound beneath his shoulder. Snap's death left his family, friends, and teammates devastated, according to a report. The college sports information director told the news leader in 2003 that Snap was laid back and quiet. This has stunned everyone. He is not the type of kid you think this would happen to. A former roommate and teammate stated that Snap, quote, was non-confrontational. His parents claimed that he didn't have any known enemies. Police learned through an investigation that the perpetrator did not force their way into Snap's second-floor apartment. They believed that as Snap was cooking a meal, he heard a knock at the door. When he opened it, shots fired. Evidence at the scene suggested that Snap attempted to close the door during the shooting, but one of the bullets pierced through a sliding glass door nearby before it struck him. The motive for the killing is unknown. Anyone with information regarding the unsolved murder of Michael Ryan Snap is encouraged to contact the crime line at 1-888-562-5887. Thaddius Houston, murder of a 34-year-old man whose body was found inside his scrap metal shop, remains unsolved. Thaddius Houston was 34 years old when he was murdered. His body was found on the floor of his scrap metal shop in Cocoa, Florida, more than 30 years ago, and the person responsible for his death has yet to be brought to justice. On the morning of March 12, 1990, deputies with the Brevard County Sheriff's Office were dispatched to a warehouse on 1510 West Peachtree Street after receiving a 911 call from a patron about a shooting. When police officers arrived on the scene, they found Thaddius Houston dead inside his business, where he collected and sold aluminum cans and other scrap metals, according to the Orlando Centennial. Houston, a community activist, had been shot several times in the chest and stomach area with a small caliber handgun. Witnesses told police that when a rusty gold four-door Chrysler backed up to the shop, two men exited the vehicle and opened the trunk. A few seconds later, gunshots were heard, and that's when they saw the car driving away. The driver of the vehicle was described as a white male with reddish-brown hair and a beard. He was wearing a light blue baseball cap, a red plaid shirt, and work boots, Florida Today reported. It was reported that a second person was inside the vehicle, but witnesses could not provide a description. At the time of his death, Houston lived in an apartment complex at 836 Poinsett Drive, in a neighborhood known as Little Vietnam, because drug users and drug dealers frequented the area. Although Houston went through great trials and tribulations, he was able to save money over the course of 11 years and start a scrap metal business. He also spent that time trying to make a change in his community by organizing tenants associations that fought for more police protection and housing improvements in the neighborhood, according to a report in 1990. Slowly but surely, the neighborhood began to change. Landlords were cleaning houses, more police officers were patrolling the area, and a park was built for the children in the community. Houston also said he wanted respectability for his fellow tenants, but they soon lost interest. In a 1988 interview, Houston stated that, quote, "When people start getting what they want, it's hard to keep them interested. Sometimes you don't live long enough to get things done." Cocoa resident Lucius Potter said, quote, "He was like a brother to me. He was one of the nicest people you could meet. If you needed money, he would let you have it. I borrowed money from him all the time. He was a good man. He really cared about the children, especially," said John Smith, a resident at the apartment complex. The motive for the shooting is unknown, but investigators believe that money could have been a motive, A friend of the victim stated that Houston was known to carry large sums of money inside his scrap metal shop. Anyone with information regarding the unsolved murder of Thaddius Houston is encouraged to contact the Brevard County Sheriff's Office at 321-633-8413 or contact Crime Line at 1-800-423-TIPS. A reward of up to $5,000 is being offered. And that, dear listeners, brings a close to these True Unsolved Mysteries, Volume 15. If you are sleeping, I hope Slumberland is treating you comfortably. If you're awake, I hope you've enjoyed this collection. Until next time, please take care of yourselves. I'll be reading to you soon. Have yourself a good morning, a good afternoon, or good evening. Peace, love, and light to you all.